That was so good. Well, good morning again. So as you can tell, I had two people here today on stage with me who represent the depth of my soul, Reverend William and Jason, because there's a little rocker inside of me that I don't let out very often, so I allow these guys to do it. I grew up in LA in the San Fernando Valley at a time, I won't say when, but at a time where there was a lot of great rock, well, there always is, but I think it was the greatest time for rock and roll. And people like the Foo Fighters and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they capture an essence of what I carry inside of myself, which is just rebellion and rock and roll as an outlet for me when times were tough. And being able to lean into the music, lean into what I couldn't articulate, what I couldn't find in my outside world at home or anywhere, but they sang it. And it allowed me to express and feel something that wasn't in my vicinity except through rock. And that's why I love you two so much, and thank you for being that archetype. So I talk about my past quite a lot because that's what we're supposed to do as ministers. I've learned that now, and boy, every time I have to do a talk, I got to go back in the memory bank and see what's going on that's relative to me right now and what works and what's to be taught. And today I was thinking about when I was getting ready to leave my family of origin, my home in Studio City, and I had my eyes set for Santa Barbara because my sister lived there, and it was like the great escape, right? I had a great family member who was like actually a best friend to me, to be able to help me with learning about life. And I remember there was this, as I was starting to kind of go back and forth, and I would go visit her, and then I made the big move and actually moved there. When I would come home to visit, I was so excited because I missed home. I had homesickness because there's so much you don't know you have to do when you live on your own, like pay bills and find your own meals and all that good stuff, that responsibility stuff that we were talking about. But what was so odd for me is that as soon as I would be home for a couple of days, I wanted to leave again. And I kept going through this homesick and want to leave and I want to escape. And it was so weird to me because I was trying to figure out what's going on here because no place felt like home. And I was yearning to find home. And I realized home clearly isn't a place. Home is a consciousness. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. And that's why my talk title is called Find Your Way Home. If you haven't noticed yet, I'm really a lot about finding our centeredness, our soul, and opening up and learning about what that is. Because we have this life, which is an amazing life. It's a trippy life, is it not, what we're experiencing? And I love it. I mean, I love the people I know. I love what I'm learning. I love the technology. I love it all. But what I know about myself and everybody is that we're more than what we're doing here. That there's a place inside of ourselves, I call it the soul. You can call it your spirit. But there's a place inside of ourselves that we may not recognize enough. And then we get lost in the outer world. We get lost in the world of conditions and politics and this and that, and then our energy is draining, and we forget who we are. And that's why we teach here, remember who you are. Because you aren't politics. You aren't your family. I'm sorry, you aren't. You're bigger than that. You're not the circumstances of your life. You are nestled within you, the wholeness of being, right there. And I guess what I want to remind you of today is to get tuned into that and pay attention to that, because we stay separated from that place within. And I speak from experience here because I went into a part of my life where I was totally out of touch with that part of me, and I got very, very lost and very, very negative. And so one of my things that I teach as a minister is how to find your way back home to the soul of who you are. And so as my next slide tells you, we are the movement of the Spirit. We are the action of life. And we are the pulsating, rhythmic consciousness in which infinite motivation is taking place. And I got this quote from Raymond Charles Barker, who wrote a really great book called You Are Invisible. It's one of my favorite books, and it's one that's not taught very often. But he really hones in on the fact that as much fun as these physical bodies are and this physical reality is, that we are truly invisible. And we are that spirit. We are the essence of life. And so to really understand ourselves differently, to see ourselves as this expansion, this nature of life that we all are, and plug into that and let that take you to where you're going. When Jason was singing his song today, it took me back to such a time in my life, many times in my life, where I've come to a place where I've said, times like these. Times like these, whether it was watching my dad make his transition, or my mom, or watching people going through hardships that I counsel, times like these that break the heart apart, times like these that we all have, that is a commonality to all of us. We cannot avoid times like these. They happen. But what I know about us, the power that we have within ourselves, as that song said, that we can learn to love again. We can learn to trust again. We can learn to remember who we are again. And really, we don't need to learn anything. We just need to remember. When times like these happen, we have to turn within and hold ourselves in love and remember that within ourselves is such a deep resource of life force that is right there waiting to be called into our expression, into our consciousness, into our thoughts, into our beliefs. But we have to remember to call upon it. We have to remember that we are this invisible movement of life that never stops. But our minds think it does stop when life falls apart. And that's what I love about Science of Mind, because it doesn't say, if you practice these principles, nothing challenging is ever going to happen again. We do not teach that here. I want to disabuse all of you of that notion, because sometimes people come into this teaching and they think, well, if I practice these principles, I'll never feel badly again. I'll never feel heartbreak again. I'll never cry my eyes out again. No. Because life happens, and we experience these connections, and when things shift, when we lose loved ones, when we lose anything, when something shifts and we weren't expecting it, and it causes us to break apart, there is a source within you that brings it back together. That's what we teach here, and it is within all of you. Nobody is outside of this truth. It is there within all of us. And so in times like these, we turn to that source. We turn to that eternal rhythm of love and light and energy that's always moving. Whether our heart is broken or not, it is always active. It is always moving. It is always there for us to bring us back to life. And so that's what we teach here, to remember that. May I have my next slide, please? So before I read this slide, I want to tell you about a blog that I wrote this week, which unfortunately it didn't get out to you because somebody was on vacation and didn't have a chance. So hopefully we'll post it. And the blog was called Who's Driving Your Car? Who's driving your car? When I was younger, in one of my more confused states of being, I used to have these dreams. I know when I look back, it's like, wow, I don't go there anymore. That's kind of cool. That is a benefit of this philosophy. You do not need to be confused your whole life anymore. Anyways, a perk, one of many. Anyways, so I used to have these dreams when I was very lost. And the dreams were that I was in a car and there was no driver. And I knew, I was smart enough to know, well, that's clearly a reflection of my consciousness right now, because I feel like there is no one driving this car and I'm sitting in it, so what up? But it took me a while to figure out what to do. So I wrote this blog about that, about who's driving your car. Sometimes there's no driver, sometimes it's your children, sometimes it's a spouse, sometimes it's politics, but sometimes we've had enough of that, right? We had enough and we wake up and we say, I need to drive my own car here. I am the driver of this car. And so what I would love for you to kind of think about in your own life with that is to think about who has control of you. Because I hear a lot of people saying, well, I can't do that because this. I can't do that because my spouse doesn't want me to. I'd love to do that, but I can't because this is a limitation. And those limitations need to step out of the driver's seat so that we can sit in that driver's seat fully in our authentic nature, knowing who we are, stepping on that gas pedal, and going forth into what our greatest dream is. And so to look at who is sitting in that driver's seat, if it's not you, it's time to do some inventory. And I love this quote from Emerson. He says, "It's easy to live for others. Everybody does. I call on you to live for yourself. And I love this because this is a real sticky point for people. I read about it all the time. I hear about it from others that they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to do what they want to do because they don't want to hurt other people, that they're living for other people. And they're sacrificing themselves because they think it's selfish. They think it's selfish to be who they are, regardless of what other people think about them, because other people are sitting in their driver's seat. They're letting everybody else call the shots. And that just hurts the whole universe when we do that, because we're here to be who we are. There's so many gifts that everybody has, so many talents, so many different ways of seeing life. And you know what? We are a global village. And there are things that we do with different ideas that come together that you bring to the table that nobody else does, no matter what that is. And so it's so important for us to empower ourselves and to allow those deep gifts, those deep understandings and ideas that are ours to speak and live and share so that we can grow ourselves and have a better world. When we're dumbing down and just saying no to ourselves and smiting that authentic fire, we're hurting ourselves and we're hurting the world. And so I'm here to tell you, I'm like Emerson, I call on you to live for yourself because there's a way to balance it where it's not selfish. You know, Dr. Joe used to talk all about the gas mask, the oxygen mask when you're on an airplane. If you're on an airplane and the cabin loses pressure and the oxygen masks come down, you've got to take care of yourself first so you can take care of everybody, right? And that goes for life. It's a great analogy for life. We have got to make sure that we are good. We've got to make sure that we're strong, that we're healthy, that we're in a state of wholeness. And I love the idea of wholeness. It's a great word because it is, for me at least, it allows me to know and look at myself and say, is everything firing in my circle? And we might talk about it as the legs of the table. That's kind of a science of mind thing. We've got health and wellness, we've got financial prosperity, we've got creativity and connections with others, relationships. And so when I am whole, I know that all the legs are balanced. And wholeness is our divine nature to live into wholeness. So if you're feeling like you're askew or imbalanced or parts of yourselves are just kind of like muted or less than, those are the things to look at and to explore and to activate so that you can be fully balanced and fully in wholeness. And wholeness means something to everybody. My idea is different than other people's, I'm sure. But find your inner wholeness. Find what makes you feel complete as a being, right? And do that for yourself. Do it for the world because we are here to be whole. Because when we're whole, we all rise together, like what Reverend William and I were talking about. When we are all in a place where we're in love and we're balancing and we're forgiving and we're compassionate, when we're activating and living in that energy, it can't help but affect others in a positive way. So it's really interesting to see how our little world affects everybody and to do our thing to keep ourselves balanced and well. And so my next slide is remembering you. And I had a friend years ago who we were talking about this idea of remembering, and she said, you know, it's like you're bringing lost parts of yourself back together. It's like we lose parts of ourselves, and then we're not whole, right? And so to find these lost parts, see where you've disowned yourself. And I know you might find this shocking, but I have had experiences where I have felt like I can only achieve so much success. And been all right with that and kind of like talked myself into saying, well, that's as far as I can go. And recently I was at a celebration of life, and it was such a beautiful celebration of life, but something came into my awareness that allowed me to feel what it is to be more successful. Because I'm fine with how I've grown a lot the last 4 years. I've come to different places inside of myself. I've become more transparent, stronger, and confident, and I've liked that. But when I was at that celebration of life, I realized there's more. And I felt what that more feels like, because we're really teaching you a lot this year about feeling yourself into your life, feeling yourself into your expansion, because the heart is such a strong energy field, much stronger than your brain. But when I felt what it is to be even more successful, it was like, wow, I didn't even realize I was limiting myself, because I was okay with how things are. But the nature of the universe, the nature of who we are, is to expand. Even though we come to really great places, we keep going and going, we are meant to go on and expand and expand. And we don't need to just say, well, this is it, I've hit it. There's so much more. If you choose to, you have the choice to stay limited, of course, that's always a choice. But your nature of who you are is to be as wide open, to go into new territory. That is your divine birthright to do. And you don't need to figure it all out in your head. You just need to say, I'm open. I am open. Because doesn't it feel good when you're open to just say, yeah, more would be great. Don't know what that is, but more would be great. Because you know what happens, the more comes up. And you figure out what that is to you. But it's really about keeping ourselves in that remembrance of what's possible. And so for me also, and hopefully for you as well, is there's just a place inside of ourselves that I believe knows everything and remembers everything, and we just kind of shut it off for whatever reason. We block on knowing and remembering all these different aspects of ourselves. And I want to bring my next slide up because this really talks a lot about what is going on beneath the surface that we're not remembering that could be getting in the way. And again, another Raymond Charles Barker quote: "We make our own mistakes, suffer from our own foolishness, and we must also make our own return journey into righteousness." And I know that word might be weird for you, but just think of that as wholeness, into wholeness. And he goes on to say, "God was, is, and will remain the essence of life, truth, and purity. Let us enter this essence in belief and be freed from our unbelief and human mistakes." I know for myself that there's still a lot of guilt I have. There's still a lot of stuff that tends to come up and get in the way. My mistakes, why didn't I do that? That stuff. And all it is old ways of judging myself based on wherever I was at the time and still holding myself in unforgiveness about it. That is a travesty that we do to ourselves. And so I love this idea of remembering and bringing back the lost pieces because I've separated myself from seeing myself as this wholeness of this divine essence and energy, because I'm holding myself against making mistakes, from being an idiot, from doing this, from doing that. But this is why I came to you today with Finding Your Way Home, because being upset with ourselves, judging ourselves, not thinking we're enough, bringing ourselves to this lower level isn't the truth of who we are. And when we can pull that away, we always can come back. We always have the option of coming back home to you and that beautiful purity and love, what Raymond Charles Barker calls God, that God essence. That is always intact because it's our vision, it's our perception that clouds us from seeing that beauty that we all are. And so when we remember, yeah, we've had our human trials and tribulations, we've done this, we've done that, should have done this, why'd I do that? When we can really stop doing that and thinking that and telling ourselves that and say, you know what, inside of me is a source of life that is spirit, that is everywhere present. That's what I am going to look at. That's what I'm going to live from. That's my home. When we do that, the extraordinary is now able for us to walk into. Yeah, thank you. Yes. So there's this really great book I stumbled upon called, I think it's Anam Cara. Let me make sure. Yep. And it's this beautiful Celtic book it's like Celtic wisdom, and it's all about the journey of the soul. It is absolutely beautiful. And this passage that I want to read to you really kind of solidified what I want to teach you today. And it says this: when you decide to practice inner hospitality, the self-torment ceases. The abandoned, neglected, and negative selves come into a seamless unity. The soul is wide and subtle. It recognizes that unity fosters belonging. The soul adores unity. What you separate, the soul joins. As your experience extends and deepens, your memory becomes richer and more complex. Your soul is the priestess of memory, selecting, sifting, and ultimately gathering your vanishing, literally remembering. I think I skipped something there.
Vanishing days towards present.
Thank you. Anyways, let me speak to this, because I thank you. So our soul that I'm speaking to you about today, that doesn't judge you, your soul that is the wholeness of your life, your soul that really is at the center of your beingness, your soul that remembers everything. It remembers everything through a different light. It doesn't remember your life path as being one where you made all these mistakes and you screwed up. It remembers the experience and what you got from it. It remembers the love that was always there, even though you may not have seen it. It remembers the growth that you had from every experience where you fell down. It remembers it so much differently. And I love that it speaks to the soul knows only unity. The soul only brings everything together in one understanding. And what this calls for me to do is to stop seeing everything divided, to stop seeing this and that. And I know our society right now, it's really big on that. It's dividing all of us, not just externally, but we're dividing inside of ourselves too. If we're seeing division out here, it's in here. It's in here. And that's why it's so important to come to seeing your wholeness and your soul, the integrity of being that's always present. And to live from a place of seeing this experience that all you beautiful people are having, this beautiful experience that is unique to you, the people that you've connected with, the different places that you've gone to, the jobs that you've had, the families that you've been in. All of those have so much yumminess, so much beauty, so much grace, so much life because it's your life. And so it's all about seeing differently from that integrity, from that wholeness, and remembering it differently now, because we can. You can remember anything. I remember when I was younger, for some reason I had this presence of mind. I think I was graduating like 9th grade or something like that. And I remember I was just so distraught with finals, and I was just disliking everything and changing and going to high school. But I had this idea in my head that said, in a few years I'm going to look back at this and it's going to become gold. Right now it feels icky. But when I look back at it, I'm going to be able to see the treasure that this experience is. And I was very aware that things change with time, because we change with time. And we are the crafters of our story. Even though the energy has happened already, the experience has happened already, we can change the way we experience those memories in a heartbeat. And that's what I love about science of mind, because we're not trapped into life and seeing it through this narrow view of things suck and that's the way it is. It's about, this happened, I'm going to allow myself to process through it, but at the end of the day, I am going to find that nugget. I'm going to find the treasure. I'm going to remember this much, much differently. And that's our power. That's the power of the mind. It's the power of the soul. And it's always there within you. You've got it. My next slide. This is from Ernest Holmes. I had to bring Ernest in, of course. This is actually from, he has beautiful meditations in the back of the Science of Mind book. I don't know if any of you had a chance to go back there. There's just beautiful poetry. And this is one of those. He says, "And there is a secret way of the soul which all may know. It is the way of peace and love. The secret way leads into places of joy and into the house of good. It is the way of the spirit, and all may enter who will. I am so sorry. I tread the secret way of good, the path of peace, and I enter in the secret place of the Most High." And I wanted to leave you with this passage because it's a reminder of who you are and what lies within you. And I will tell you, I understand really, really, really well what it feels like when you can't access that. Totally get it. And I support anybody who's going through something right now and you can't hear this and you can't read it. And that's okay, because life is what it is, right? These things happen. Times like these happen. Times like these happen. But what's cool is they're not permanent. What's cool is life is fluid. What's cool is consciousness is expansive. It is creative. And when we hang into that energy and just know that everything shifts and changes, there comes that breakthrough with whatever you're walking through, where you can read that and you can feel that and you can say, I remember that now because that truth, those words are inscribed in my heart. There is a secret way of the Most High that is who I am. There is this energy of good that can never be taken away from me, that I can call forth into my life. Just because things happen doesn't make that go away. Just because things like that happen, the home is still right there. That home that you are is always intact. It is always solid because you are that home. And so to find your way home takes mindfulness. It takes courage. It takes love. It takes compassion. We've got to be so compassionate for ourselves. We have got to stop making ourselves be something we are not and be what this is, our home, our light, our energy, our peace, and just let life unfold and always come back to home, into your place of being in that perfection, that place where you can be anything that you are, where everything integrates, where everything comes together, where there is no judgment, where we stop being mean to ourselves. I love that other quote, the inner hospitality. We've got to be hospitable to ourselves because when we're hospitable and loving and kind to ourselves, we can't help but change the world. That's where it begins, at home. Namaste.